Hi, my name is Jesse, and today I will be talking about UX and UI design. Um, so what exactly is UX design and what is UI design? UX design is primarily focused on the user experience, where we talk about how it starts from the how a user interacts from the start of the application to the end of the session. And since UX design is based on the experience, this also means how effective the design is in terms of how users are able to interact um, with navigating around the design and how responsive it is and how you could navigate through the website and make it responsive in terms of accessing websites or web pages through multiple ways instead of just having a singular design for only accessing one thing one way, because not everyone will understand that. So that brings me to usage flow. And usage flow of a UX design essentially just means that when you interact with the design of an application, users want to be able to feel very easy to navigate throughout the application. Take Apple, for example, a lot of their products are all operated about the same way. And because of that, using their devices become very easy for people to jump from one device, say like an iPad to their iPhone, and still be able to know how to use their um, the operating system better. UI design, on the other hand, deals with the visual aesthetic. So, like when you visit a web page, you want to be able to see where you want to go. You don't want it to feel too cluttered with too many things. If it's too cluttered, then you'll also end up with people who have no idea where to go. Because of that, UI design is very important for making someone feel welcome to the web page and want to stay on that web page and interact with that web page. This goes for applications as well, because if, say, an application on your cell phone, because of the smaller screens, if it's too cluttered, you won't be able to really navigate. You'll press on wrong buttons. And that's why UI design focuses on the interactions with touch points. Touch points being toggle switches, icons, anything that you pretty much interact with, anything you can press on, which also means like, say there's a text box in an application. Most of the time, you don't want to put like such a transparent font on there that people won't know exactly what to write in there. And which also is why UI design heavily relies on the aesthetic portion, which includes color schemes. Having a color scheme that is more pleasant to the eye rather than having these super bright colors. Um, it's just more pleasant to read, and you don't want your colors to primarily blend with each other. UI design also creates a guide through interface. When you deal with the interface of a application, people want to be able to navigate. I bring up the point of navigation a lot because navigation is the key to a good design. You want it to be effective and you want it to be able to identify where you want to go with things. Like, for example, if I want to go to the academic calendar of Fullerton's website and I only have one way of getting there, that one way becomes very focused to the point where if I want to access it, I don't want to have to backtrack like 3 times just to even get to that calendar. Instead, I want to be able to access it wherever, from whatever page I am currently on. And it creates a more friendlier experience on how to get around a website without allowing a singular path. The differences between UX and UI design uh, are many different things. Um, like I said before, UX design is pretty much the user experience, whereas UI design is user interface. UX design focuses on making a connection between users and experience. From what I said before, when you first launch the application to the time that you close the application, that experience that users interact with is their kind of feedback, because you don't want someone to be using an application and then say, oh, this was a terrible experience, and then they end up deleting the application. They never want to use the application. And that also comes with the responsiveness. How good are the wireframes of navigating from one end of the application to the other end of the application? And a lot of UX design actually comes from user research, because based on applications are usually designed for business needs, and UX kind of bridges that gap between the users and the business needs. UI design, on the other hand, focuses on visuals and creating navigatable experiences. Navigable experiences being the whole, like, if you are able to access a web page from anywhere throughout the website. UI design is for visual design, colors, graphic design, layouts, and typography. The layouts is very key because you don't want anything to ever feel cluttered, which is typically why UI design on web pages will have 3 different sections. The main navigational pages are typically towards the top or the left side of the screen. The center or middle section are geared towards the body, which require a more like informational, something that's a little more in depth. And the bottom portion is kind of like the references or copyright notices. Could also be like basically footnotes or smaller links that not everyone needs to access. Why do we need to care about it? Caring about UX design basically means that we want to improve the quality and interaction that users have with the application. The feeling of that interaction being that when you interact with icons or buttons on the application, you want it to feel responsive. You don't want to be sitting there waiting for a buffer screen the whole time. Which is why UX design is heavily reliant on testing and different iterations of the design in order to improve the effectiveness. And by improving effectiveness, it also increases the ease of usage for users. For UI design, it again has to deal with navigation. However, navigation in this case is going to be more of the visual aspect. You want to be able to access web pages, the titles at the top of the screen, anything that pretty much allows a user to navigate throughout the application without having to backtrack and question where they are lost or not knowing what page they're on because the title's missing. That also brings me to accessibility, because you want an application to be easy to access, whether that be like having a search bar at the top so that people can find what they're really looking for. Animations also bring in like a more, I guess you can say, pleasing experience in the aesthetic aspect, because having animations allow for a smoother design choice instead of like saying going from a black screen to a white screen while you're in a dark room. Having an animation there to gradually increase that going from dark to light would make it easier on people. And UI design also has to deal with device sizing. When you're sitting here on a desktop or a laptop, you're looking at a bigger screen, but when you're looking at your phone, it's obviously a smaller screen, more condensed. So when you're holding a phone, that device is so much smaller than having a physical monitor that you would want to create a design that's simple to navigate still, whether that be through drop-down menus or having font that's smaller, but then you don't want it too small, otherwise people can't read it. Also, if you have too much clutter in a UI design on a smaller screen, you're going to end up with users not allowing for ease of access, because then they'll end up pressing wrong buttons. So how did UI UX design become so popular? So UI UX design became popular because of all the technological advancements we've had within like the past 20 years. And we're talking physical devices and websites, as in there's kind of been like this blurred line between UI design and web developers, because web developers are pretty much UI designers who know how to code. They can code that front end. Physical devices, meaning cell phones, have gotten in a way bigger because we went from such tiny digital screens to having basically the full screen on a phone. And with that, there needs to be ways for people to navigate throughout the phone, how people are able to customize their phone with like different backgrounds, buttons, toggles, anything that is easier to read for people. Hence why toggles sometimes will either have like a different colored background to show that it's enabled. Applications, there's a lot of applications being used on both PC, personal computers, or your phones, because we have, well, I mean, you can play games on your phones, but applications regarding like calendar, calculators, um, maps, especially because you don't want that to be too cluttered, especially when you're trying to drive and get directions. Ease of interactions, so that, for example, the whole iPhone, Apple thing, when you're interacting with an iPhone, people can jump, who know how to use an iPhone, people can jump to an iPad and know exactly how to use it, because that's kind of what Apple focuses on, is that UI UX design that allows for ease of access so that anyone can learn it even at any age. And design trends. Once we make more technological advancements, designs will have different trends, because we'll have, say, more efficient ways to design something, or a new design becomes very popularized. And for the future of UI UX design, we have the evolution. So UI UX design usually never really disappears. It just evolves or adapts. New tech advancements, as I mentioned before, means more implementation. Implementation is kind of saying, what can our devices, our applications do now that we had to implement? So, for example, now we have Bluetooth. Before we didn't have Bluetooth. We have Wi-Fi, stuff like that. All of our devices and stuff need to be able to interact like that. Otherwise, well, I mean, your phone's almost kind of useless without it. Having more tech advancements means that, say, better portability, readability on computer screens, being able to zoom in and zoom out text, or even web pages. With the evolution of UI UX designs, we also have to include more features to meet market needs. So, for example, creating a market need that requires a feature would kind of be like being able to, oh, here's a good one, sorry. Some of the included features to meet market needs, so that would also be Tesla recently. Tesla, instead of having a physical key, they actually have you use your phone to set up the vehicle. that also includes getting in and out of the vehicle, locking the vehicle, checking security cameras, stuff like that. Virtual and augmented reality has become very huge in the market lately, and especially with Apple announcing their Apple Vision Pro, where you're able to uh, basically just wear a headset and interact with hand tracking, different types of menus. And we also want to have minimization when designing UI UX. Sure, at first we may create too many things, like too many buttons. Navigating might be a little difficult, but over time, with the iterations, UI UX becomes minimized and just as easy to navigate and improve readability. And another part of minimization is actually to use voice. So for us, iPhone users, right, we have Siri. I think Samsung used to have Bixby. I don't know if they still do that. Or there's Google Voice, basic, or another big one that I think a lot of people know is Shazam, so that we can identify music. Using voice is a very big feature lately, especially with AI advancements. That way, voices will be able to detect things, and it's also a faster way of being able to look something up versus having to type in each individual letter. And those are my references for the presentation. Thank you.